Aging congregations trying to recapture the little ones back into the ministry. Let's talk about that now on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and A.J. Mathieu.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, A.J. Mathieu.
Hey.
Well, my friend, Father Time comes for us all, and it's not possible to grow younger at the individual level, right? The gray hair is coming in nice and thick. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see A.J.'s goatee. Fully gray at this point. I don't know. You got some patches of color in there. When we first met,
Much left,
I think you...
Yeah? A little more color in there.
A little more color in there.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah. But when it comes to churches, you can grow young. You can. So you might be an aging congregation, but today we want to tackle this question of how do we grow younger? How can we start reaching younger folks? Maybe there's a lot of gray hair in your congregation. This is a common question and a common problem. And today we want to give you some thoughts, some strategies, some inspiration so that you can begin to grow younger as a congregation. But before we do, I'd like to give a shout out to the Healthy Churches Toolkit. So if you go to healthychurchestoolkit.com, you can sign up for 7 days for free. There's a lot of good tools and training and information and dynamic tools and resources that can help you in your attempts to grow younger as a congregation, but also just to make you a healthier church. So go to Healthy Churches, sign up free for 7 days. We'd love to see you over there.
Love our friends over there at the Healthy Churches Toolkit. It's a good group of guys.
Yep.
Very supportive of this episode.
And gal.
That's true. Just kidding. It's us. In case you don't know, it's all us.
Well, but neither of us are a gal. We also have a gal that helps us run the toolkit.
That's true.
Shout out to Molly if you're listening. Thanks for all your help, Molly.
And so today's episode also comes out of the big 300 episode that we did last week when we asked previously to that, the week before, for questions from everybody. So this is another listener question. The actual question was stating that they're an older congregation and they don't have a lot of ability at this point to minister to children. And so what methods would allow them to grow in size? The way we're answering this today is what can we do to reinvigorate, revitalize a children's ministry in a church with an aging congregation. So listener that submitted this question, hope you're listening to this and that this will be helpful to you and a lot of you because we get this a lot. I mean, we deal with a lot of aging congregation churches around the country and even around the world. And so this is a common question. And Scott, we've been faced with this numerous times and it's difficult. It's not easy. And it is a slow process of change for sure. You cannot snap your fingers or do a couple things, paint an old room, and expect it all of a sudden to be full of the laughter of children next Sunday. But I think we've got some useful things here that can begin a process of change and revitalization in an older church. I hope this
all right.
hits the spot.
All right, let's start. Let's dive in, my man.
Okay, compadre, the first one I've got here for us is heart change. So this might be difficult to hear. I don't know. I mean, that's why you paid us, so much money for this podcast so we can tell you hard things. The first of all, your church didn't become an only aged congregation overnight. This has been a slow process. So, and you've known it for a while, likely, but it takes recognition of that. So, I mean, at the very beginning of this, I mean, whether that's a family meeting, there's 30 people left in the church and we all get together, or still maybe a good sized church, but most of the younger families have gone away or are totally gone. It's going to take at least leaders getting together or maybe the whole church and saying, we need to say what we all see. And that is that we aren't where we used to be and we're not where we want to be in the future. And so let's just bring this out into the open and recognize that. The other thing that needs to be said in that is that change has to happen. You cannot go from a church that is shrinking, dying, aging, and expect families and young kids to all of a sudden want to be there unless you do something differently. I mean, I hate to say it, your fate is sealed unless you choose to change. But the fact is you can change. But again, it's not fast, and it requires effort. It requires some perseverance to work through things being different.
Yeah, totally. I think just having that brutal honesty, I think that's so important. When we work with churches, there's often a recognition that there's a problem, but there's some hesitancy to even acknowledge specifically what the issues are. There may even be some outright blindness to what the problems are, and we'll get into some specific examples of this maybe, but just what vibe is the church putting off to the community and to families in general? You may not have really an awareness of that. When a family walks in, what do they feel? When a family drives past your facility, what do they see, and what do they perceive about the church? And I think that it's possible that you might see, oh, well, they're just judging us because of all the gray hair. And so you might be thinking, well, they just don't like us because we're older. Which, I don't know, maybe there's some element of truth to that, but in reality, there's usually much deeper issues than that. And we're going to be going into some of those things that you can do to change those things. But it starts with that brutal honesty. What are we doing wrong? There's reasons why young families either left the church or visit and don't come back. There are reasons for that, and blaming the families or blaming the shifting culture or blaming all of those other things that's not a way to a solution. That you must be honest with yourself. What are we doing wrong, and therefore what must change in order for the outcome to be different?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk in our second point about physical space. So we want to reinvigorate, restart a children's ministry space in the church. We're going to focus mostly on just the smallest, just the littlest kids, like a nursery, and then maybe, a few years of very early elementary. As a church grows, you can expand children's ministry to higher ages, depending on how much physical room you might have to be able to separate different age groups out. But for now, usually, with like 2 rooms, you could have like a nursery space and then a young elementary or even toddler preschool type space. So, but it has to be nice though. It's got to look clean. It has to look fresh. This is not just, a fresh coat of paint on some old walls. You've got to go beyond that. Cleanliness down to the details, baseboards and switches and safety. If we're sending kids down the old steps to the basement space, don't let that hallway be dark wood paneling, and old carpet. You don't want it to be scary. Like the room looks good maybe when we get there, but it's a scary route to even get to our room. This has got to be well lit, bright colors, happy, clean space. Parents want security, so they need to know that I'm handing my child to a responsible person. They know who I am. Everybody knows whose child is mine. We have systems in place to monitor this. When I come get my child, I'm the only one that could possibly leave here with my child. All of these have to play into it. So this does have a cost investment. Now, there's inexpensive ways to get things done with, volunteers and donations and things and doing labor yourselves. But in the end, it can't look like it was donated and we did it ourselves. It still has to have a really good finish to it and look good. And that, you could say, people are putting too much emphasis on unimportant things. The spiritual side of our children's ministry is what's most important. But the fact remains, this is what parents want. You can call that unreasonable, but this is 2025. This is what you need to do. And if you resist that and say we can make this happen without it, you're probably wrong, and you probably will max out at less than what you envision. So this has to be a place of investment.
Totally. So many churches that we're working with, they're going, well, we don't really have a children's ministry, so we have these spaces and we keep them clean, but they haven't been touched in 10 years. We had the pastor's kids, and that's it, in this ministry. And so we just haven't touched them, and so we haven't invested in it. And cleanliness is like the lowest bar. Of course, it should be clean, but is it fresh? Is it updated? When is the last time you put a fresh coat of paint? How old are the toys that are in there? Would they be considered safe by modern standards? I worked with a church once that had cribs, which that's normal for there to be a nursery that's got cribs. But these things look like baby cages. I mean, I would not have wanted my kid to be in one of these things. It was super old and super dangerous and frightening. So you'd rather it be, like a pack and play, something that's soft and, fresh and clean and these kinds of things. So just being cognizant and aware of those kinds of things. And if it's been a while since you've had kids, ask a younger person to come and just take a look and say, I want honest and brutal feedback. You don't need to be nice. You need to be honest. So find someone who you think can do that. An outside group like us, we could come and tell you if your facilities are looking very nice at all. But the physical space really matters. When you walk into it, do I go, oh, I'd be happy to let my kids be here? Or do you go, oh, this is a little bit scary? I like what you said, AJ, about where is the children's space physically located? Is it down in a scary basement or is it in a bright room? I worked with a church in California a couple of years ago that their children's ministry space was in the basement. That's just where it happened to be. So there weren't really windows, but they did an incredible job making that space feel so bright, so light, so fresh. I mean, they had updated all of the lighting fixtures down there to these, really large, soft white, but still bright lights. But they'd done it pretty economically. I mean, they'd gone to IKEA and gotten, less expensive furniture, but everything looked kind of like going into an IKEA, like it's very clean, and so you walk into that as a parent and you go, this is a really nice space for kids. So, take a hard look at the physical space and make sure it's prepared.
Yeah.
Which is a really good tie into number 3.
But I just wanted to add, I worked with a church years ago that had the best children's ministry space I've ever seen. And it was an old building. It was a pretty large building. It had maintenance issues, and the children's space was in the basement. And when they took me down there, I was absolutely blown away. Scott, I give you a hard time about Disney, but the only comparison I could make to this space was that it was designed by Disney Imagineers.
Hey, let the record show I did not bring up Disney.
This is true. This is probably the first and only time I'll ever mention it. But it was that high level because, you just know Disney, of course, they're capable of creating these things that you just can't believe that they did that. And it was a shock to me. I was like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And of course, they were proud of it and they had worked really hard on it. But, and not everybody is going to be able to do that. But I'll tell you what, when you see something that has had a lot of work put into it and really well thought out, and kids are going to think it is the most magical place on earth on a Sunday morning, that is a huge win. Because when they're like, please, Mom and Dad, can we go to church on Sunday? I can't wait to be back there. Then you've got something really going on special. So there we go.
That's a good contrast even just to the church that I was just talking about that in California, where I also was blown away by the quality of their facility. It was hardly Disney, but just feeling like, wow, I can tell that a lot of intentionality went into this, but it was obviously much less expensive. I mean, it really was. It was like IKEA furniture, IKEA light fixtures, but it was so clean and so thoughtful about how they were using the space. But that came across also very powerfully. So don't think, well, they're saying we got to spend $150,000 on upgrades. I'm not saying that. You can very economically, a smaller church where you're only going to have maybe 2 rooms you're using initially, you could spend $10,000 and an incredible refresh update. Of their places.
Hey, maybe even have an art school or something nearby. You could have students do a mural for you or something. You never know what resources you might have. All right, number 3, we're talking staffing. So you've got to be prepared. This is one of these spaces that we talk about that is really sort of a, if you build it, they will come kind of scenario. And that is being prepared in season and out of season. Actually,
It's almost like if you don't build it, they won't come. Yeah.
This is an old enough reference. If this is your problem, you're old enough to know this Field of Dreams reference. So, but and I talked to again, aging congregations. I say this also about welcoming guests. They haven't had a guest to the church in 2 years. And I'm like, well, if you want to start having guests, be prepared for guests. Welcome people, even though, I tell pastors this all the time that are in this scenario. When you get up there and say good morning, welcome guests. Even though you're looking out over the same 30 people, say it anyway. Because one of these Sundays, there's going to be a new face in the room and you will have said it. And be in that mindset. Same thing with this. Have your staffing ready. Train people to be a part of this ministry. Have them there Sunday after Sunday, as you don't need to do these things like necessarily in this as an order of steps. You can be doing things at the same time to prepare, but be ready when that first family comes in, and you're going to be so excited, and the team is going to be ready to bring that.
And oh my goodness, act like it's normal.
Yeah. Don't need to smother them.
You're our first kid ever. Oh my goodness, don't do that. Be like, hey, it's sort of like dress for the job you want,
Yeah.
Sort of just be prepared, be ready for when it happens. And, don't be like, oh, well, we've got the staff here, but we don't have a curriculum. Be prepared every week, be prepared.
Yeah. Don't turn the lights on if a kid shows up. Right. Turn the lights on.
Yeah. Turn the lights on. Either. Because I'm telling you, this does make a difference. I worked with a church in Delaware a number of years ago where they were having this problem. The pastor, he had like 6 kids. So there were always technically kids available to be there. But if it was only his 6 kids, they wouldn't have someone there. And bless her heart, it was like the wife was the only one who would ever volunteer in there. And so it was like if she wanted to go down and run children's ministry with her own children, there was kids ministry, but otherwise there wasn't. And I sort of encouraged him and said, 1, you need to broaden the base of volunteers down here. 2, you need to have it every week, whether it's just your kids or not. You need to be ready. And they leaned in. They took that advice. They leaned in, and it wasn't long until I started getting calls from him saying, you'd be surprised. We're having families show up. And there's kids here every week now. So I don't know how that works. I'm not the Holy Spirit. I don't know. I'm not saying it's a magic thing that happens. I'm not promising you anything. But I am telling you this. If you have a guest and they come and there's no children's ministry, or they perceive that there is a children's ministry, but they weren't prepared for me to be here, they will not come back. They won't. Because there are 100 other places they could go in town that's actually ready for them. I'll just be honest, I wouldn't with my kids. If I showed up and there was no program from, I guess my son's now, he's wouldn't be in children's ministry anymore, he's too old. But for my daughter, if I showed up and there was nothing for kids, I'd be like, I don't know if this is going to be a fit. Probably be a one and done for us. So be prepared, be staffed every week.
Yeah. That's good. All right.
I want to say one other thing briefly on that would be if you were going to invest in a staff person beyond the senior pastor or lead pastor, if you have the funds to do that, children's ministry would be the first place I would spend money. And I know a lot of churches, it's worship ministry. I would say you can do that with volunteers. The senior pastor can pick the music and you can have volunteers run that ministry, the music ministry. But if you can pay one part-time staff person, I'd put it in children's ministry. Have someone who's able to make sure that everything's ready each week, that there's curriculum ready, and maybe they themselves are a younger person, so it's giving a younger, fresher face to that ministry. I'm not saying that is not a silver bullet by any means. Like, if we just hire a children's person, we're going to have kids. I'm not saying that, but it doesn't hurt and it can help.
Yeah. Okay, so we've been talking internal preparedness. Now we're going to talk about where are these people going to come from. And the first point here is an external resource, and that is you getting out of the church and going and connecting with this new target audience that you're trying to reach. And you need to see it as that. This is an outreach effort, really, is what you're asking for. I mean, if you say, we would love to have kids to minister to, that's great. That's a great heart for outreach. You're wanting to reach children. Well, how are we going to reach children? We're going to reach them through their families. And we have to go to where the families are. We've got to find opportunities that we can go and meet people and introduce them to our church, talk about what we care about, Jesus, and invite them to come and be a part of what you're doing. You have to put a little effort into what's happening in your community or in your city that you could become a part of and be able to begin to develop relationships with people. That's where this is all going to start. And we've got a previous episode resource as well, and we'll link to this in the YouTube description or the show notes on your podcast app. But episode 260, we talked about this, and that'll be a good resource also to go back and check out.
Yeah. I mean, you can't expect to connect with families if you don't know families. So certainly if you're a grandparent, and your kid and your grandson plays, t-ball or plays Little League or something, don't just go to his games. I mean, that's good too, but maybe volunteer, maybe go and start selling concessions, at the times where your grandson isn't out there playing, or find ways to be involved in the school system. There's usually like reading buddy programs or things like that, like ways where you can start building relationships with families. And it doesn't need to be a direct advertisement for the church, but it will change your heart. Going back to point one, it'll change your heart and your perspective when you just start to see families. It's so easy. The older we get, we're all guilty of this, myself included, even though I still have kids in school. You just kind of morph along with where the stage of life where your kids are. So I know less and have less empathy and sympathy, I guess, for parents of kids who are infants and toddlers, because that's not the phase of life I'm in. And by the time you get to be a grandparent, or an older person, maybe you don't have grandkids, you're hanging around older people most of the time. You're retired friends. You're hanging out at the senior center. You're hanging out at church and doing Bible study with the same senior saints. You're going on the senior saints cruise or whatever. I mean, all of that is normal. I'm not even criticizing it, but if you would like to connect with families, you have to be where families are. And so it's going to require something of you. You're going to have to refigure your life a little bit so that you're making space to be with people who are different from you in terms of age and family life. So outside the walls of the church. Yes, we want you to be ready. There is a little bit of if you build it, they will come. But if they don't know you, they don't know about the church, they don't have a relationship with you, they're not just going to show up. No, people don't wake up on a Sunday morning and go, I think I'm going to go to that random church down the street today. I mean, they go there because they were invited, because they've seen you, because you made some connection with them. They don't just randomly roll in for the most part.
Yeah. I guess, this is not a point. Here's a bonus for you. Just thinking about that, Scott, saying, that randomly decide to go. They would have looked at a website first. Families are going to be checking out websites. You need a modern looking website, but don't portray yourself as something that you're not. So you should have some information about your children's ministry, but don't make it look like it's packed. Don't put up fake pictures of packed classrooms and then have them show up in, the set of twins that they brought makes 3 or 2. So be authentic and have your website also be fresh, because people from the outside are going to want to see that.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
One thing that you could do, this isn't in that episode, and it's not exactly in our notes. I'm not sure exactly which point this would fall under. I'm going to put it here. You can take a bit of a church planting perspective and attitude, and it is possible if you're trying to intentionally kickstart growth in the church. If you were able to partner up with another church in the community and say, hey, would you loan some of your younger families to our church for a year? And just ask, hey, would you help us rebuild this children's ministry and participate and so on? I know that's maybe a big ask, but if you're a part of a denomination, or if you're part of a network or a cooperative group, a Baptist association or something like that, doing things together, or maybe that's a bridge too far, but maybe partner with another church for VBS. Some of the older churches in your community that none of you have children's ministries. Why don't you put your heads together and do a community VBS program, and then you split those families or whatever based on geography, and say, hey, we've got children's ministry. I mean, there are things that you can do, kind of get creative to collaborate with other churches as well, to be more visible in the community and start kickstarting revitalized children's ministry program at your church.
Yeah, that's good. All right,
you're doing trunk or treat. I'm sorry, you're doing trunk or treat, but you're not following up those families. What are you doing?
Yeah, we've got other episodes about that. All right, so finally, that was kind of an external outreach kind of thing. You also need some internal ministries as well that you can try to, again, form relationships and build bridges between your church generation, the parent generation, and then finally down to the kid generation. So think of creative ways that you can utilize your life experience, your wisdom, your desire to build bridges, that you would be able to connect with these families in meaningful and authentic ways, so that in addition to them just being able to be there on a Sunday, there's something else for them. Some of this could even be sort of outreach, but on site. I mean, it could be family movie night that you host, and also have maybe childcare for the youngest ones, for the babies, so the parents and their toddlers or elementary kids can watch the movie in the sanctuary or something. Or I had another idea, just slipped my mind.
Parents' night out.
That was it. Yeah. Perfect. Yep.
Yeah, you can provide babysitting and allow parents to go and have a night out, but also teach your knowledge, pass your knowledge on. Host cooking classes for young moms.
Yeah, that's cool. Sewing. Yeah.
Sewing. Men teach young men how to do handyman projects. Most of us, I'll put myself in this category, I don't know how to fix anything. My dad was not handy, and so he never taught me any of that stuff. Not his fault. Don't blame him, Dad, if you're listening.
John, you're a good guy. It's okay.
He's an incredible man. But he is not handy, and he will be the first to admit that. So I don't know how to fix anything. So if you were to host handyman workshops, I promise you there would be young men who would show up at that. So find ways to partner and pass on knowledge to parents. Don't just think we got to have programs for kids. Programs for kids are good, but build relationships with parents, and then they'll want to bring their kids, because the kids can't drive themselves to your church. So think about that. So these are ways to do outreach essentially through an internal program. But all of these things, maybe the last thing I want to say, AJ, from my end would be, one of the biggest mistakes I see churches make is buying into the lie that it's not possible for them to grow young. And that is such, one, it's not true. And two, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. Like when you really believe we can't grow young, no young family would want to go to our church. I hear that from churches a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have anything to offer. Young people don't want to be around old people. We can't do good children's ministry in our facility. We don't have the money. We don't have the staff. We can't. It is such a powerful lie that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So maybe this is a bonus tip as well, or maybe it goes back to the first point we made. You have to stop that. You have to go, when we can do this, by God's grace, it's His will that our church would be effective. Like, we don't have to hope that God would want that. We know that He wants His kingdom to expand. We know He has a heart for families. So if we have a heart for families and we put in the effort and the work, we can trust that the Lord is going to bless our efforts. To what degree, I don't know, but we're not taking responsibility for that. We're surrendering that to the Lord. But what we're not going to do is say it's not possible, that we can't do this. And that's where leadership, I think, really comes in. The leaders of the church have to go, no, we can do this. This can happen. And shut down the negative self-talk and the negative voices that are saying it's not possible.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not alone. There are strategies to help. There's people to help, us being just one of many. And we'd love to have that conversation with you if you want to. Go to malphursgroup.com. You can connect with us there, schedule a meeting. We'd love to have that chat, hear about your church, talk about options for the future, because that's what we're all about. We're here to help you revitalize your church, become great disciple makers of all ages, near and far. Thanks for being with us this week on the Church Revitalization Podcast. Links to today's show notes are there below in your podcast app or in the YouTube description. Thanks for being with us, everybody. We'll see you next week.